Lebohang Pheko is a senior research fellow and political economist at the Trade Collective, joins me now to discuss the State of the Nation address that took place yesterday. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. After that speech, some of the business community came out and said the speech was what they wanted to hear. Trade unions like SAFTU saying it was an anti-poor State of the Nation address.
So if the business community is happy about it, there's definitely bound to be another group of stakeholders who would be extremely diametrically opposed to it. I'm aware that, for example, the ESCOM announcement that it's going to be parceled off into 3 little pieces has made NUMSA in particular quite unhappy. And then, of course, they argue that it means that there's going to be less job security, but also the cost of fuel. What does this mean for the cost of energy, the cost of production in this country, and where is the cost then going to be passed on to? It also means then for smaller businesses and their basic running costs, this may also present some kind of a challenge to them. There's a whole host of other things as well within the budget which sometimes looked more, it sounded a bit more like an electioneering manifesto at certain times, which is not surprising. I think that when you're going to present a State of the Nation as the incumbent party during any election year, you're bound to try to present yourself as being as viable as possible to the business community, to investors, and also to us shareholders in South Africa Pty.
There was President Ramaphosa also mentioned this competition bill, which he said he was going to try. It's close to being passed into law, and it's going to be a way of trying to break the monopolies that we see in South Africa. So while there is a pro-business slant to it, there's also a way of trying to balance out the playing field with regards to entrepreneurs and people in business.
So there's just not enough detail on it, and that's one of the concerns that I have. But it is supposed to try to break through to particularly young entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs, give them the opportunity to break through the sort of barriers that they usually face: intellectual property, competition policy, breaking through monopolies as well. And I think that what has happened in the past is that we have not been able to mediate between the different monopolies very efficiently, which is why you basically have a few key players in most of the key sectors, which makes new emerging businesses extremely reluctant or very difficult without the necessary resources, startup and so on. Very difficult for them to break through into most sectors.
One of the topics that's coming up a lot wherever you go is the 4th Industrial Revolution and South Africa's preparedness for it. President Ramaphosa saying that they want to overhaul how basic education works. They're trying to bring in digital tablets and workbooks in order to make sure that kids are equipped. There's been criticism of that, saying if people can't even deliver textbooks, how are we going to make sure that kids are skilled and these tablets do get distributed properly and they're used properly?
And that has been the argument that many of us have made for a long time, that it's not really about the mechanisms that people are educated on. It's the quality of that education. It's the consistency of that education. It's the components of that education. It's giving children a sense in which they're developing the cognitive mechanisms to participate in the education process in a way that prepares them for the world out there. And I mean, I suppose the early childhood development component is very key to that, because that means that at an early age you're socialized to ask questions, you are socialized in a way that explores your creativity and celebrates creativity and all of these sorts of things, because we know that by the time we reach university level, the funnel of creativity, the funnel of cognitive instruments that are necessary to be able to participate in a lecture situation are not there already. And then we have situations where, of course, a lot of young people then have to be remediated, spend the first year of university being basically slightly lost. But it's not only that, it's also, we shouldn't presume that everybody wants to go to university. We should also make sure that upon leaving school, a child or a young person can find multiple exit points into the economy. So whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through apprenticeships, whether it is through multiple ways, and there's very little that's been said about those multiple streams that are then going to be this filter or funnel into the 4th Industrial Revolution. And I think the other thing that's really slightly troubling for me is that that makes a whole bunch of presumptions about availability, access to data, access to computers, access to laptops. I'm very wary about the kind of systems and checks and balances that we have in place for the distribution distribution of those tablets, and also for the safety of the children who are carrying those tablets around. And I think that we need to go back to a far more fundamental question, which is the quality of this education that we're giving our young people.
When we're speaking about the state of the nation, a criticism that was coming out was that there were some things that was missing. Someone on social media was saying he didn't speak on the issue of drugs and how our socio-economic problems aren't necessarily being dealt with enough in a state of the nation address. Do you think that's a correct assessment?
Yeah, look, I think that you can only get so granular within the space of time given. Remember that President Ramaphosa is inherently corporatist, I would say, in his approach. He's corporatist and managerial in his approach to running government and running government business. He also has a greater inclination towards the economy, towards investment, than towards socio-economic issues. And even though perhaps, and I think that if you were speaking about young people, drug abuse, other forms of neglect, other social diseases and social ills have to be very necessary. But if we're speaking about a person who is far more interested in getting South Africa working without perhaps giving the detail and understanding that when we speak about social cohesion, there are different social diseases and social ills which are the result of a country which isn't functioning very well at all. I don't think that I would have expected him per se to explicate on that.
There was also an announcement about a directorate that's going to focus on investigating issues of state capture, crimes related to that high-level crimes. People are calling it Scorpions Reloaded.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
It is the Scorpions Reloaded. It's also the special financial crimes unit reloaded. It's a whole bunch of things which perhaps have already been in have existed in the past. It begs the question as to why we keep on reiterating and reconfiguring perfectly, decent institutions and decent mechanisms, and rather than giving them the support that they actually need in the first place. And I would rather want to hear about the detail in that. How much is it going to cost? Who are the people who are going to be? What are the key functions? How is it going to be rolled out specifically? And is it going to work well with different government departments? What kind of oversight role is it going to play? What kind of oversight role and powers do they actually have to subpoena, to issue warrants of arrest, and all of these sorts of things that are very necessary, the kind of teeth that are needed to make these sort of commissions and investigative units have any kind of gravitas, even in the public domain, and even amongst the people who perhaps feel that this is yet another institution that can be ignored.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Lebohang Pheko joining us there to speak about the State of the Nation address yesterday. After the break,